I love it. I love it when you open the podcast but don't actually hit record.
I know, right? It was great. I was like, hey, and you're like...
We just lost like 15 minutes of good material.
Some would say we lost it. Some would say that it's, if you tip us over on our coffee, then you can get it there.
It was the sum total of the good material we've had this year, and it wasn't recorded.
It was the best material. I mean, we talked about how much Dan liked the new Batman movie, and oh man, no, we didn't.
Every movie has to be dark and broody.
I actually liked it, everybody. I watched it on the 4th of July.
Well, maybe I should watch it again. I don't know if I was in the right state when I watched it. I did not enjoy it at all.
The best way to watch it, I'm telling you, man.
It was long and boring.
You watch it while something else is going on. You're trying to distract your dogs, and then you're also like a 6-pack in of your favorite beverage, Mountain Dew.
You're trying to distract me from what we're covering today.
No, I'm not. I just don't want to get.
You're employing the same dog tactic that you were employing. You're employing the dog tactic on me.
I know, right? It's great, right?
Distract me with things I like to talk about, so I don't talk about this book.
You don't want to talk about my dogs? Oh.
No, I don't. I've got 2 little dogs just like your dogs right next to me that bark all day long while I'm working because the 2 people next door to me are school teachers and they are home all summer. So they bring them out all day long, and all day long they bark.
My dogs only bark at you when you come over for the first 2 minutes, and then the rest of the time they just want to sit on your lap.
Right. But if your dogs were next to me and they barked all day, I would be really annoyed.
True. I understand.
So you are trying to distract me like you do the little dogs so they don't bark. But I'm not going to bark today. I'm not mad at you at all.
Okay, good. That's good. That's good.
Why would I be mad at Greg? Greg's like one of the nicest people on the earth.
I know. I'm like, you're not the same person trying to get Rashiki to give me a stink face. You're not the same Dan that...
By the way, Rikishi, you should give Greg Smith a stink face at Ocon on one of these 3 days, July 21st, July 22nd, or July 23rd. Rikishi, if you're out there and you're listening, Greg deserves a stink face, especially now.
I don't think he's listening.
Well, he may not be listening, but I may enlighten him when we're there.
And you think one of our listener is going to tell him?
Well, it's my hope that if you see us at Ocon, you may have the opportunity to pick up the book we're going to review. And if not this one, at least a couple of the issues before it.
Oh, yes, this book. Yes, this book we're going to review. Yes, Brett will have. We're
reviewing and I'm going to throw out spoilers because I actually received the hard copy of this book yesterday from Kickstarter. So we're going to review Starlite number 5. We've reviewed 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so we probably should review number 5.
I would let you do number 6, but I'm just joking. I wouldn't let you do number 6.
You're so funny. You always, tease me. You won't, I used to get to edit things and look at things ahead of time, but not anymore. No, I don't get to see the secret project. I don't get to see issue 6 of Starlight. I don't get to see any plot breakdowns for Junior Braves. No, I am locked out now.
I'm sorry. My lawyer says I can't talk to you about this stuff anymore.
Your lawyer's a hack.
I can't say anything about him. I'm legally bound.
Your lawyer can choke out the other person's lawyer, but
and he can choke me out too, and I don't want that.
Well, anyway, I think we should get on track and stop avoiding Starlight number 5.
Okay, 4 minutes in and into the content we go.
Well, you're avoiding.
I'm avoiding because I know. I'm not. I will say, okay, you tell me what you think. You take a look at this cover that Brett did for us. If that's the cover.
You know what? Let's pause on that before we get into this book. We probably should recap the first 4 issues because they come out once every 6 months. So we shouldn't just expect the reader to be up on this.
All right.
And also we might even want to get the listener, right, interested in maybe buying these books at Ocon or from Overcast Comics website. So maybe we should, let folks know what was going on before this book.
Oh, I suppose.
Maybe you could give us a nice little recap.
Let us
know. And I'm going to give you some parameters because I know how you can, wander a little bit when your mind gets going and do really evil things with your brain. So what I would like to do in this recap is if you could both recap the plot of the first 4 issues and tell us who the main antagonists and protagonists are.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Where do we begin?
It's your story, and you've already paused 30 seconds thinking about what you're going to say.
I know, right? Starlite begins in the Pacific Northwest. We meet a couple of teenagers, a sister and brother. We meet Sarah.
Their names?
I'm getting there. Boy, oh boy. Thank you. Gee, Willikers. Man.
I hope this is how you pitched the book.
I know, this is how I pitched the book. This is like, my talk to the folks over at the streaming service was like, so, this is a book. You're gonna love it. It's great.
It has characters. It has a guy and a girl, and
basically space cat pirates and superhero kids. That's all you need to know. Hijinks.
Plot recap. Anyway.
Okay, plot recap. So, man. Okay, so you have the sister and brother. You have Sarah and oh my god, like I'm already all over.
Do I need to recap your book? You have Sarah and Chris.
Yes, since you're so good at it. Sarah and Chris are teenagers in the Pacific Northwest. They get an abrupt door knock from a telemarketer. No, they get who wants to give them an extended warranty on their car. And now he's a journalist who thinks that they might be the child superheroes from the past. And that's where we meet Roger. And during this whole entire meeting, all 3 of them are kidnapped by space cat pirates who are sent by the Seek and the Keep, the Vine Seek and the Vine Keep, who are our antagonists of the story. And they basically want to collect up this item that they believe that they have. So this is all in the first book. And then, in the second, third, and the fourth book is essentially, I mean, I can do this really fast, is essentially Sarah, Chris, and Roger trying to fight for their lives and figure a way back to Earth against space cat pirates, crazy, mean-looking interdimensional space spiders that are space wizard spiders, and
the spiders are called the
Vine Seek and the Vine Keep,
right? And the cats are called.
Oh man, they each have their own individual names, but I just call them the space cat pirates.
Okay.
What you have is there another name that we use for them that I've forgotten?
That's fine. We're gonna go. You are the storyteller. So.
I know. Well, they each have their own name. There is
there was the dad and the brothers, right?
Yes, the dad, the brother, the sister, and the mother. And so it's man.
Okay, well, the names of the cats are unimportant at this moment.
You'll get their names
except in issue 4, we have a whole story arc of redemption with the cats. Yes. And as we leave issue 4, the cats are now teaming up with Chris and Sarah and Roger.
And Sarah, we find out, actually does have a power.
Yes, she can melt things.
She can melt things because we find out that, yes, indeed, Roger was correct. These were the superhero children that he was looking for.
Well, we don't know that for sure.
Well, no. Well, yeah, no.
I mean, we do as the reader, but Roger's only found one of them.
He's putting it together in his head.
I guess, doesn't Chris just tell him he's
Chris
right?
tells him at the end of book 4.
And also in book 4, we find out that Sarah can only use her power when she is high.
Yes.
Or thinks she can only use her power when she is high.
Yes. It heightens it elevates her to a level where she is able to release the power.
I mean, you are the author, so I don't want to critique what you and... So, we're getting to Starlite number 5. And I do want to say...
Tell me what your thought is. Tell me what your thought is. Yes.
Well, let's introduce the crew first. We've got Travis Webb, He
is the mastermind of this story. For those who are who haven't been keeping track all along, he is
writing and plot.
So this came from literally his mind while he was at Burning Man with Brett.
And then we've got Greg Smith writing. And plot support.
Yeah.
Okay.
Character development.
And Brett Wedele.
Wedele, yes. Doing all the amazing art that
amazing. Yeah. Some first issue watercolor, and now it's computer, right? But still watercolor style.
Yeah,
right?
he did. Well, so he does everything like by hand, and then he does it. Then he paints it all digitally.
Yeah, the art's crazy, beautiful. If you've never seen Brett's stuff, I always talk about Brett's stuff because it's amazing. And then you got all-star letterer for this one too.
Oh yeah, Tom Orzechowski.
Yeah,
which if you're not familiar with the name, there's this book series. This book series that's been around for just a little bit. Called, what was that? The Spawn.
Oh, Spawn? I've never heard of it.
Yeah. I guess he's a Guinness World Record holder for lettering. So
don't let your wife hurt me.
Yeah.
But I just sent 5 signed issues of Spawn, or 6 signed issues of Spawn off to get slabbed.
Did you? And
signature verified.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. By CBCS. Go. Yeah.
I mean, my feelings on this are kind of along the same lines as my wife, but sometimes we do happen upon collections where there's like a item and it's like it comes to us that way, and it's like, well, I wouldn't normally go and do this myself, but it's kind of cool to have this thing.
I also have 2 more signed issues of number 1 and number 2, and 1 and 3, 4, 5, and 6 unslabbed. And I think an extra issue of 1 and 2 unslabbed. So not that they're worth that much, but it's signed.
It's cool to have, dude. It's
cool to have. I mean, it's one of those situations where I do want to talk about the book, but since we went to Todd McFarlane's comic shop when we were kids, and he was there and would just sign things, we just thought that was amazing. We weren't thinking about selling them 40 years later.
No,
well, not even. I shouldn't say 40 years later, but 30 years plus, later.
Yeah, when you're a high school kid and you're just like, oh my gosh, this guy draws the things that we're reading right now. This is so cool. He's here right now talking to us like people. What the heck, Yeah.
And his brother-in-law talked to us all the time. He owned the store.
Yeah, I know.
We had the inside route on anything Todd was doing at the time.
Yeah.
Including him getting into the toy business, which is hilarious because I feel like that's where he made most of his money.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a ton of his toys hanging out in my basement in cases, just because, like literally display cases, not like, hey, I want to just throw this in a tote. Because they're cool.
So. But with that said, a great group. Travis is written. He's like a ghostwriter supreme on movie scripts, a fixer. I don't want to call him a ghostwriter. We call him a fixer.
He's a fixer. He gets called in to fix things, and actually, most recently, and he's pretty excited. He actually is. He was brought in to finish and work on. I can talk about it because it's actually on IMDb now. Is Albert Pyun's last work. Which if you grew up in the 90s and you watched, I could throw a ton of names out there, but any of the Nemesis movies, Cyborg, I'm trying to think, Aliens from LA, Atomic Dreams, there's just tons of things. The Captain America movie, he was the man behind those things.
Captain American movie,
the original Captain American movie.
Oof.
Yeah. Okay. No, dude, it's really cool. And and Travis actually is he's working on some other stuff. So it's along that lines of stuff. But it's pretty cool. He got to take a look at what Albert had done in the past, and he's actually getting some credibility for his actual writing. He was called in to finish it up and to put it all back together, because Albert passed away not too long ago, and he's never going to see this piece completed. But as Travis is a super fan, getting the call to do this and getting his name actually on the bill is like a dream come true. So super proud of him.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No. I just I'm super proud of him.
This is also, I'll just say, talk to Travis. Well, I didn't message with Travis today. We didn't speak, but we were messaging, and he actually cares about my opinion about this book.
Yes, he does.
I was surprised. I was like, oh, okay. So I messaged him last night to show him that the hard copy had shown up at the house, and then he asked me what I thought. So I'm going to tell you verbatim what I told him.
All right.
It's really good. And I couldn't sleep after I read it.
Oh, no.
And Travis said, can you please put that in a review? And I said, certainly. I will say it right on the podcast.
Oh, my God.
And so, friends, you are in for a bit of a ride here. And I believe I told you about the same thing last night after I was done reading it. I literally couldn't. I was up for a good hour and a half. I read it late because we were going to cover it on the podcast today, and then I couldn't sleep for a while.
I will tell you, when Travis and I were putting this to bed, so to speak, and sending it off to Tom, I was like, oh my gosh, dude, this is a really good issue. And then we, 2 days later, because Tom got it, read it, and then messaged back, and he was like, that was a really good issue.
Yeah. What I want to say before we get started, and I feel like I'm channeling my inner Travis now, because Travis does all sorts of writing coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And what I will say is the best writing allows the reader to put themselves into the story in some capacity and interpret along with the characters. And what you all did with this piece, and we're going to get into it, is you give so many points where people can relate to what's happening in the story that they can link their own experiences to what the characters are feeling, while the characters are feeling the feelings.
Well, that's good.
And that's the best writing, right? The best writing draws the reader in to feel along with the characters, but also allows them the room to interpret what's going on through their frame of reference and through their lens. Like, there's nothing heavy-handed here and forced. And that,
thank you.
I'll say, as we start the critique, that's the compliment I'm giving the two of you in writing this. And then the three of you, because Brett's art brings this to life, right? Without Brett's art here, it doesn't happen. And we go ahead and start out on the cover. So we've got one of the Vineseek behind Chris. We get a close-up on Chris's face, and you just see Chris's hand, and there's blood dripping off it. And love this cover for multiple reasons. One, it's beautiful, but two, I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I have a pretty good idea, but I don't know for sure, because Brett is nice enough in the classic comic book sense to leave it open enough for interpretation.
Right.
And if you remember at the end of the last story, Cat Brother and Chris had just gone off to hold off the Vineseek. Sarah was recovering. She was no longer high, but she also was sort of I'm assuming, and it hasn't been disclosed completely yet, but I think her powers sort of need to recharge or be triggered by an emotional state. So you all haven't told us that exactly yet, but we know that the drugs help, right, with the emotional state, and they help open up her perception, right? So she can, the way I see it, and this is what you told me to say earlier, and now it's been 10 minutes later, right? And now I'll say it. The way I interpret her power use and the drugs right now is that the drugs alter her state of reality to the point that she believes that she can actually do the thing. But without the drugs, she doesn't believe she can actually do the thing. Right. And she just believes they're both kids that didn't have powers, right? And since her brother presumably doesn't have powers, or was getting the powers in his association with her or being close to her by proximity, right? Then she really does. She sees her reality is that her brother doesn't have powers. They've grown up. Their kid life was their kid life, and they moved on. And now she does her thing. And the only time she can actually use these powers or perceive that they could possibly be real is when she's in an altered state. That's how I see it.
And that's pretty close. I mean, they do I'm not sure if we said it in 4 or not, or if you get it more of an explanation. I think you get more of an explanation in this issue as to how they got their powers. To get there. So we'll roll that out. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty dead on. And then the type of, and for those listening, and if you're not familiar with the types of drugs she's using, ecstasy is a mood elevator. It is definitely something that will get you into a different emotional state that from where you were to a different place. And there's a lot of studies that researchers have done to test that and to use that. And it's crazy to think that in the 70s they were using ecstasy as a marriage counseling tool. But
well then
but
just go home and use some of this.
Well, no, because it would change your mood and elevate your feelings. So you're pretty close to it. And I mean, now people use it recreationally for different things, to see music, to feel music, and to feel more connected to those around them.
Or to feel connected to your melting powers.
Yes. yes.
That are not created by a thing on your chest that zaps people.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, we get to the opening page and we have a question. Do you remember the Starlite Drive-In? And I answered, of course I remember the Starlite Drive-In. The Starlite Drive-In is in Lakewood, or was in Lakewood in Tacoma, Washington. And I did a little bit of research for us as we get into, because you asked me a question, so I have to answer it. See, the Starlite was built in 1948. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah. It was once one of the largest drive-in theaters in the world, and was a landmark of Highway 99 before they built I-5, and Highway 99 was renamed to South Tacoma Way in Tacoma. There are still parts of Highway 99, but it's weird. It doesn't actually stay connected completely, but you can drive on most of it.
Yeah.
And Highway 99, for those folks that don't know, was the route from Los Angeles to Seattle. So, and the Starlite stopped showing movies in 1996. And we are both aware of this. They did show movies for a long time, but it basically became a giant swap meet as we went into our high school years. Yeah. And then it just became a permanent swap meet. And in 2005, the swap meet was shut down by Lakewood licensing code because people were just selling stolen goods, which
all sorts of things
also shouldn't be a surprise because they were definitely doing that in like 1991. So
yeah, probably when you could roll in and buy any kind of car part you're looking for.
Yeah, probably happening. And in 2014, a seller was arrested for peddling drugs hidden in mattresses, according to Cairo 7 News. So, yeah. But anyway, they tore down the Starlite, unfortunately, the screen and everything in 2019, which really sucks. It especially sucks because the Starlite would have had a revival in 2020 due to some virus that came, and people would have loved going to the drive-in theater, staying in their car by themselves, watching a movie.
I'm going to say, and it's crazy to think too, like, I mean, growing up in this area that we grew up in, and knowing when we grew up in this area, there was 6 drive-in movie theaters at the time. Yeah. You could go to 6 different drive-in movie theaters, and like literally all of them closed on this side of the water. There are 2 operational on the peninsula currently still. But the ironic part was that most large municipal areas would set up the screens and stuff like that in 2020 through 2020, like end of 2021, a little bit through 2022-ish to show movies drive-in style. In this area. And a lot of people would be like, I wish the old drive-in was around still.
Well, I saw some of Empire at the Starlite Drive-In. I also fell asleep in the back of the car during Empire at the Starlite Drive-In because I was not very old. So
back in the day.
But anyway, we've got as my parents' trick. They'd fill you full of popcorn and then lay you down with a sleeping bag in the back of the International Scout.
Yes, the International Scout. How I remember.
And then you'd fall asleep. Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, we've got looks like it seems like it's somebody, and I presumably Chris, asking Sarah the question, and Sarah's answering that she remembers the Starlite and she saw some movie about a dog and the stand-ins. Or no, Chris says they saw the movie about the dog, and Sarah mentions they saw the stand-ins. And we've got what looks like a early
iMac.
Yeah, it's the whole one unit, everything in one. Yeah.
I had one
with the stupid CD that wouldn't spit the effing CDs out.
Well,
I hated that thing. You put one in, but you can't get it out unless you hit like open Apple Control Super Punch something to get the damn thing out.
Or use
that I have trauma over that or anything.
Or use the paperclip trick.
Yeah, but there should be like a button to eject a CD. Like it's so stupid. One of my least favorite computers of all time, but we will move on with the story. It's also beautifully rendered. And now we get to young Sarah and Chris. And have we called her Sarita before?
This as they start to get into their youth and remembering their childhood, this is where you're introduced to them as their younger selves and who they were.
Yeah, well, and this is them as kids, right? We were introduced to their younger selves as superheroes before.
Yes.
But this is just them hanging out at the house, right? Talking.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
And Sarah mentions, or Sarita mentions, I don't know. I'll probably just call her Sarah for simplicity as we go for, unless you want me to.
That's fine.
But Sarah says, well, then Mama told us we were going to the Starlite. I thought it was the most magical place. And Chris says, Starlite. And he's just like, it's just a drive-in. And we find out that Sarah, in her head, it was a place for stars to go watch movies. Mm-hmm. Or is that Chris saying that?
It's Sarah saying it in her, as her adult self.
As the narrator.
As her older teenage self.
As the narrator of this story. And she said, I imagine all our superhero friends were there talking while the movies played. And so you do find out they had met, presumably. And it's always hard to tell, right? Like, were the superheroes, did they really meet them? Or, and this was confusing, I thought, but in a good way, because I think it's supposed to be. But you get the superheroes talking, but I can't really tell but they're below her. I can't really tell if she's imagining or making the superheroes talk.
I think this is imagination play. That's the best way to describe it. This is her imagining them having this conversation.
But it's all we can also presume that they've probably actually met these superheroes too.
Yeah.
So it was fun. And then they're going to the Starlite, and we get the big Starlite drive-in. Presumably you couldn't have put the big star on the back of it because you'd get in trouble.
Yeah, there are a lot of things we had to change, as these superheroes are the Victorian angels.
Yeah, I guess you should point that out too as we go. But don't let me miss things. But yeah, we have the Victorian Angels superhero team. They could have been the something else Angels. But
been anything.
And we get little Sarah saying, that she sees it and she's saying that spells Starlight. And then we get Chris and Sarah walking. But it's interesting because Chris looks like his older self to an extent. Mm-hmm. Sarah looks very young. And I think it's almost like Chris is reflecting, oh, yeah, back then, that's why you spelled light wrong all the time. And now we get older Chris and younger Sarah. And she's asking where everybody is. And he's like, what do you mean? Where are all our friends? He's like, I don't know. I don't see anyone from my school here. And there don't seem to be any other babies. And we get a situation where she just tells him to shut up because now he's stepped over the line of his protection, right? And he's teasing her again. And we get a really great page where Chris just says, what do you mean? Mom and Dad didn't invite anyone else. And Sarah is looking around in a panic. And she just says, our hero friends, like, where are they? And he says, you mean like the Victorian Angels speed bragger, which Cannot tell you how much I love that. You're supposed to make me laugh in the middle of these very serious
I know, sorry.
scenes. No, you are. I think it breaks it up a little bit. And the Cyclone and the others, don't you? And he just says they're not here. And he's like, why do you think they'd be here? And she's like, I don't know. And she says, because Mama said everyone on TV is a star. And Chris perks up and said, they are stars. And so are you, baby girl. Now, let me show you why they call this place the Starlite. And, so far, I mean, I was catching on to the story at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll remind you that you don't have page numbers and how much that annoys me at this point because I can't reference a page number.
Yeah.
And since you have like one of the top comic letters in the world, they could always put page numbers in the pages. But with that said,
we did it because you complained about it in the first book. So we decided to just like leave them off for you.
Forever.
It was a Travis move.
So
you'll be thinking about that all night. You'll be like, was Greg joking or was he serious? I'm going to message Travis.
I'll just message Travis and ask him. But
and then Travis will be like, yeah, we left it off for you, Dan.
We get the dog, presumably in the dog movie, on the next page.
Mm-hmm.
And Sarah is swinging on the swings that were always at the back of the theater and just talking about how it's the best, the best, the best. And then I hate you.
I'm sorry. Are you going to break my legs now? Are you going to break my feet? Make me rewrite a better story, a different story for you?
I don't know. I was channeling a little bit of Kathy Bates last night. I'm not going to lie. It's pretty perfect in the sense that, spoiler, by the way, we haven't spoiled too much yet. But if you haven't read the book and you want to read it, going through these first few pages, turn off the podcast now, read the book, and then come back. Okay.
And then listen.
And I'll put a link to, I don't even know if you can purchase the book yet. I'll ask Travis if it's available on the website.
On our website. Yeah. It might be now that it's out into the world now.
Now that this has actually been sent out to Kickstarter folks.
Yeah. Now that everyone's got it, or should have it by the end of this week.
But yeah. And so if there's a link available, there'll be a link there. But I'll just say, we've got a big dead Chris being held up by a vine seek.
Impaled.
Yeah. Well, dead impaled Chris. Yeah.
Yes.
And
Brett did such a good job in doing it all shadow like. So it's very.
Yeah. You killed Chris off screen. Like,
yeah.
I think that, okay, that was shocking enough, right? We're having this flashback, but I'm sort of picking up some clues, right? That things are happening. Things seem off.
Faces are washed out during their whole entire flashback sequence.
Right. And then there's big dead Chris. Okay. And then we just get a scene of Brother Cat, Chris, Roger, and Sarah. And is there one more cat back there? But anyway. But no. And Chris just says, that's why you wanted to be called Starlite. So Chris is still alive for a second, but not long, because on the next page, he's dead. And Sarah is not dealing well with this for obvious reasons as she cradles her brother's dead body in her arms. Roger just looks away, and brother and sister Cat are not happy. And it's very interesting because, I want to pause here and, how I've given you a few compliments so far. And so this is one of the things here at the beginning of the story. I actually love how the flashback is put together with this, because you get the end of the last issue and, Sarah's basically telling Chris he's an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody assumes Chris is an idiot if he thinks he's going to go beat up the Vine Seek, right?
Right.
But these are comic books, right? Like, I expect people to get wounded and come back. That's fine. I think, as a reader, we've all had those decisions that we've made in life that didn't work and weren't recoverable. You might not have died, right?
But bad things happen. And
the relationship isn't repaired, right? Can never be repaired. It could be the end of a journey, right? In my case, lost a job, right? Like you might, there's different phases of life.
Yeah.
And I think anybody that's made a really terrible decision can relate to this without you having to have a whole comic book of an action scene for us to see Chris die.
Right.
And I actually think this makes it better.
Thank you. It was one of those things that when we were writing this out, it definitely came to our minds how we wanted to really put this together and put it out there for people to be able to see it and not have to see it, you know?
Right.
And then also to be able to connect to it.
And I think, and like I said, I think the connection's better because you don't, like, if you'd gone through this big action sequence, it almost makes it look like, I want to say almost, if you go through the big action sequence, it would make it look sort of like the sacrifice was worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And this tells me that it wasn't. And I need to know that, right? Like, I need to know that his bad decision was a bad decision, right? Like, there was no good that came from the bad decision.
Yeah, there's consequences for your actions.
Right.
If you mean them to be good actions, then sometimes things happen that you...
Right. There's no redemption. Intent didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get back to the flashback, and now we see them as Mighty Boy and Melter, and have an apartment, or they're back in an apartment. And we get back to say, and Sarah says, it's happening, Chris. This is how it starts. I know this is my real power. And that was huge. So tell us what you want the reader to believe her power to be before this page.
So what her ability is that she has the ability to change matter and to manipulate it, and she can do it without anything making her do that.
Yeah. But now we see, like, there may be some more depth to this power, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she's manipulating the literal cells to be able to have a final conversation with her brother, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then we get into Chris saying, this is my memory. That is what life is now. And then all things to come are our memories. And she basically looks up and says, hey, are you saying goodbye to me? And she says, no, Chris, I don't want to. And then they flash back to another one of their joined memories, presumably that she's channeling between the two of them. And he says, do you remember this battle? Man, I do. I was all over that thing. We joined up with the Victorian Angels, and I was ready to fight and prove to the Cyclone I was ready to join them. And she says, you were ready, Chris. You were. And he's like, I wish. I know the truth now. I wasn't ever going to be ready. And, he's acknowledging that the power was within her all along, right? At this point, which we found out in the other story too, right? The Starlite existed in her. So,
well, he had his power came from the suit. Her power was within ish. I mean, it was, they both get this power from the suits, but she was more connected to it.
Right. But the power, the power is tied to her, right? Mm-hmm. The suits don't happen without her, right?
Well, I mean, they find the suits from aliens and then they put them on and they get their
like powers. Greatest American Hero.
Yeah. Like Greatest American Hero.
But not like Greatest American Hero.
Exactly. They're not teachers. Right. He's a teacher.
But the power, wow. But again, the power is more linked to her.
Yeah.
And this is where she starts to sort of fight back against his last request, right? Like, he's telling her, hey, you're a real superhero. And she's like, no, I wasn't. I was just a dumb kid. And this is where we get the last piece, right? And Chris is saying in their talk here, because I think Chris has passed away at this point, so it's just the manifestation of what she's manipulating with matter, right?
Right.
To get this out of his brain before, the synapses shut down. And, he says, you were the only one of us who understood heart, empathy, healing, and power. You were so innocent and powerful. We were afraid that the world would corrupt you or hurt you, or worse, you would hurt others. We held you back to save you and keep you from painful realities. We didn't understand. And she's thinking, Chris, shut up. You're the hero. And he says, no. When you wake up from this, when you stand as a real hero, they will try to say my death was your defining moment. They will mark this moment as the moment that made you, and they will be wrong. And we're getting some flashback scenes from Chris's life and his experiences, and to distinguish them separate from hers. And then he says, you won't become a hero because I died today. You were always a hero. This moment won't define you. It defines me. Man. Right. Like, this is his final moment, taking full responsibility for his stupidity. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, and I'm all right with that. I'll be a good memory. And then he says, see you. And then he's gone, which, he was gone before, but she drops him to the ground, and she's in denial, right? She's like, what am I going to tell mom? And she balls up and she hates her powers. She just wants Chris to come back. And we transition to a flashback scene for Roger, who's looking at a picture on his phone.
Mm-hmm.
And he's gotten his daughter a cake with a cat on it, and for her 6th birthday. And he starts to cut right down the middle of the cat's face with a big knife. And because Roger is the genius that we've all learned to love in this story, he makes the cake have raspberry icing. And I believe it's red velvet or another red color in the middle as well. So his daughter is perceiving him cutting a cake that's bleeding, cutting a cat open.
Yeah.
And his wife plays back into the story and basically says, look, I thought I married an empathic, smart, intelligent journalist. And she says, get over yourself and start being the empathic journalist I thought I married, is the exact line.
Mm-hmm.
And his little girl is crying, bawling her eyes out about what's going on. And, again, it's Roger. It seems like this was like before Roger just became a complete and total asshole. Like he was actually trying to do good, but he's just so terrible at it.
He's let the world just kind of like crap on him, and he's not that good at being a human,
Yeah. And somebody just looked at him and said, Mr. McGee, you won't like me when I'm angry.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And so, but he does lean down and he realizes his mistake in the past and he says, how can I help? And then we get, in the time span in your search seeker, we have witnessed birth, death, countless galaxies, each which living matter and we got a spaceship flying, by the way.
Yeah.
Each which living matter whose power would be unimaginable with the power Starcore could provide. And here we are with you in this moment, the core within your reach, embedded in the body of primitive organic matter, creature of lower intelligence, the star core here in this capsule, defended by insects and yet out of reach to you, my Vine Seeker. And the Vine Seek's not real happy.
No, not happy at all.
As they haven't gotten this. And they're watching Sarah, and Sarah walks and looks to outer space, and Roger just says, how you holding up? And she says, honestly, I'm not. And then the cat speaks in with his emojis, noting that the loss was great. And he just says, Rern was our mate before we became pirates. We joined the ship and its captain together as a family, sadly. And Sarah just says, family. And that's the end. And so you have given me a really sad interlude to the story, Greg. And now I want to know how they're going to get off the freaking ship with the Star Core.
I'm sorry.
And that's the end. Oh, I don't think you should apologize for good storytelling, but it gave me a lot to think about, because I think any of us, like if you have a sibling, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get too personal about it, but I think I definitely have a sibling that everybody thought probably was a little bit smarter than me and outgoing and had more potential. So reading this, I got to interpret that into the story myself.
Yeah.
And I think as you read the story, you'll get to interpret some of those relationships too, and how those make you feel. Right.
Right. And
it was good. And I think the other thing, I couldn't sleep, not because I was horrified by the story, but I was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, some of the best storytelling. You get people to think about what you're writing and move from there. And, it's interesting because I would say too, this is the type of story that could end a comic. story.
Everybody just like check. They're like, done. I'm out. I hate this book now. I'm so mad. Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't mean check it out. They're so mad. I'm just saying this could be the end, right? Like this could be I could see this as the end of an arc where everybody they're stuck on a spaceship, so they can't just part ways, right? But,
right.
This could be the end of a story arc where everybody just parts ways, right? Like a terrible decision was made and we don't want to continue doing what we were doing before.
Right.
But they can't because they're stuck on a spaceship and they need to get off the spaceship, right? And they need Sarah to figure it out or they're all going to die, especially Sarah, because they're going to rip the star core from her, right?
Right.
So as we go from there and, kind of looking at as things move, yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see where things go from here. And now I get to wait.
Well, you're lucky because we're inside baseball on this. We're actually, we're going into the next Kickstarter, not too far off, but we're going into it with a really good jump on it because we're working these concurrently. So it's just that it was one of those things where we were just jamming.
So you're about ready to go.
Well, we like to be able to, not barring other things that we have no control over, Travis being sick or printers not being able to get paper or print things because of whatever. But we really like to be as ready as possible. So everything is moving forward. So,
well, I'm excited to find out what's next, and we're excited for you to get a chance to read this and read some of the other Starlite issues. And you can meet us at Expo, Omaha Comic Con in Omaha, Nebraska. Well, Council Bluffs, Iowa, right across the river.
Yeah.
And ask Greg about this in person.
You can ask me, and you can talk to Brett, who drew it, because he'll be there too. And
you can get your comic signed by Greg and Brett.
Yeah, and while you're there, get a look at all the art and stuff like that. Grab up all the books if you don't have them, because we'll have them.
And I don't even think Greg's going to charge you to sign the book.
I never do. Never do. Never do. I'll say that. I'll just say that. Not unless all of a sudden, something in the future makes me have to do that. Like all of a sudden I'm bound.
I love that. I don't do it now, but in the future I may need to.
No, I might not have control over it. You never know.
I also think that's a fair statement. So,
right
now you don't need to charge people to sign the book. I've
had people actually try to give me money for signing the book. And the crazy thing, and I will tell you this, honestly, I never really thought a signed book from me would be something that would be of value, because and this is just me, and just a bit how do you connect to your characters? Well, you feel Sarah talks about how she doesn't, feel like she's this or that. She's not the hero. She's not this. A lot of times as a creator, you don't have a lot of self-worth in your creative stuff, because you're like, it's just a thing I made because I really want to make this thing. And you don't realize how much it impacts other people or how much value somebody puts on something. And then all of a sudden you turn around and you look and you see somebody selling a signed book that you made on eBay for ridiculous money.
Well, I think the other part of this too is I think what you forget, and often, which a lot of creators do, it's not just you, but I think you forget too, the quality of the storytelling matters, and you write stories a lot of times that allow like I was saying, the reader to bring themselves into the characters that are in the story.
This is true.
And I think it's good. It's a style of writing.
Yeah.
And that's going to make people, identify with your characters and identify with your writing. So, yeah. And I would say, and I do want to make sure we actually end this podcast, because we could go on about this forever. And what I want to say is, come talk to us about this. So we're going to be doing some panels at Ocon. Yeah. Come talk to us. We're going to be doing at least you'll be doing, I think I'm doing unnecessary debates.
You're doing
you
and
Mike lead
debates.
that, but I think I may
You're going to be
in here.
You're going to be. I think you are a contestant with us. With
oh boy,
Mike will be leading, and you and I and another person, unless we can get a couple other folks. Mike is on the trail of grabbing up some other people, but you and I are going head to head, Dan.
We will also be in the podcast room at 11 a.m. on Saturday, July 22nd. Doing a live episode of Funny Book Forensics. And you're going to hear this episode on the 19th, presumably, hopefully, and maybe after. But if you do hear this episode on the 19th, there's still time to get your tickets if you're in the greater Omaha area. So grab a ticket to OCon and come check it out. They've put up some amazing guests so far, and I'm super excited for the show.
And I believe all four of us are doing a comic book creation panel. So where you're going to be
I'll be moderating that one, but I'll let the experts share their knowledge of comic book creation.
Badger us on how we make things, and the other two will graciously take your questions, and I'll just be a buffoon. So
and what we really want is the audience to ask questions, and I moderate. So what we really need you there to ask the questions. I really don't think Mike and Greg and Brett care about my questions too much. They've heard them. But what we need is your questions. So I've got questions. I can ask questions all day. But what we need is your questions in the audience. And you'll be doing a burn before pitching too, as well, right?
Burn after pitching? Yeah.
So after pitching, not before. That would be silly. You wouldn't burn something before you pitch it. That would defeat the whole purpose.
So, I mean, just so people understand the context of unnecessary debates and burn after pitching, because other panels are self-explanatory. Oh, hey, I'm going to learn how to make what you guys do to make comics. Or how
I'm going to hear you record a podcast.
You're going to record a podcast. Unnecessary debates is us debating real life topics like, are cats better than dogs? And bringing the real story to you. I mean, I think that's how it goes. And then, and then burn after pitching is, Mike and I, we have a couple ideas that we throw together, and it's kind of like an impromptu pitch session where we have a small recipe. We have to come up with something, and we see the audience tells us which one is better.
Awesome.
It's kind of like what happens when Mike and I go to a restaurant before we go to an actual pitch session.
So there you go. So you get to judge us all the time.
Yeah.
But come join us. These are fun sessions, and they're participatory too. So it's you don't sit on your hands in these sessions.
No, they don't. They don't happen if you're not there. They're not fun if you're not there. You, the audience, are a participant in the event that is going on. So you're actively participating in each one of these things. So we look. And
I know you've done some sense, but the last big unnecessary debate I saw was at Emerald City Comic Con, and we're bringing it from the Northwest back out to Omaha. So we're excited to see you there.
It's going to be a good time. It's going to be a good time. And if you do want to go check it out, just look up Unnecessary Debates on YouTube, and you'll see all the greatness, all the glory.
Well, and with that, I will pitch how to find us. Of course, you should look for OCon Expo or Omaha Comic Con on Facebook or Twitter. You can also find us on, are you ready for this? I've got this.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
Facebook.
Okay.
Under Funny Book Forensics.
All right.
You find us on Twitter and Instagram and Threads.
Threads, that's correct.
Like I've got threads like I'm wearing right now.
You got threads.
Which makes me a threader.
You're a threader now.
Yeah. On funny with the same handle as we have on Instagram. So Funny Book 4 and 6. And come find us, and we will be posting these podcasts all the time, but come find us, follow us, and we'll let you know where we're going to be at OCon as well. And at some point this week, I am going to pick the comic that we are going to review in Omaha.
Oh, goodness gracious.
And I'll say what I will say. I'm going to stand by my original statement.
Mm-hmm.
If I find a copy of US 1,
yes,
number 1,
yes,
or 2 or 3 or 4, whatever. Okay. I don't care which issue of the series, or somebody gives us one, we will do that.
Okay. We'll throw everything else away and we'll do that. If someone brings it to us, you have to bring it. But if not, then we'll do whatever Dan prepares.
And I think next week on our podcast, in honor of getting to see Phil Hester and Andy Parks, we are going to go back in time and review Green Arrow issue number 1, written by Kevin Smith, art by Phil Hester and Andy Parks.
All right.
So we have a little bit of a lineup headed in, and we'll move on. And then after the show, we'll get back into our Drugs in Comics series. So,
all right. Sounds like a plan, Dan.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing you. I think that's all the pitching we're going to do today, except you can always meet Greg and Ann Smith at the Retro Emporium in Kent, Washington on Meeker Street. Go relive your childhood.
That's right. You can. I was walking out to close up the shop today and had a friend walk up with their significant other and introduce me as Greg, the comic book guy.
See, there you go. See, you're famous.
So it was fun.
All right, and you can. I'll get the link to Starlite. I'll either put the link to Starlite Kickstarter or Overcast Comics in the show notes, so you can pick this up and read it. And that's it.
That's it. Okay,
I'm
cool.
done.
Excellent.
Done.
Good. Okay, good.
Oh
man, it is so hot in here. I gotta. Jeez, it is.
Yeah,
I gotta
done.
open a window
It's
or something
over.
like that. And I think that it's like
close it up.
I can't. I don't. Oh, you're not.
Close it up.
I'm the one.
You are in control.
Oh, geez. I'm sorry,
Hit
everybody.
the stop button.